MODO. Morsels.
In earlier morsels, we've seen geometry and trigonometry. Now it's time for a bit of shadertry. Specifically, I'm going to look at two ways of adding colour gradients to procedural textures. In MODO, to add a material to some geometry, you create a material tag using M and then give it a name. In the shader tree, you'll find the corresponding material group. Let's add one of the procedural textures to that group. It is controlling the diffuse colour of the material by default, which is fine by me. You read the effects from the bottom to the top, so these new diffuse colours override anything that was set in the material. Out of the gate, the texture looks fun, but it is somewhat monochromatic. Adjust the foreground and background colours and the bias and gain values to get more variations. We can also vary the scale of the texture in the texture locator. But we are still stuck with just two colours. I want more. I'm looking for a rainbow connection. An easy way to add a colour gradient is to use, you guessed it, Easy Gradient. It does what it says on the tin. Let's add an easy gradient above our procedural texture. Instant success. The easy gradient uses the value of the texture below it in the tree to create a ramp using the 8 colours specified. Fiddling with the bias and gain of the procedural texture creates some interesting variations. If you need to change the range of values generated by the driver texture, change its effect to, for example, driver A. You can then change the foreground and background values. There are a lot of knobs and whistles to adjust in the easy gradient, and I don't find it particularly easy to work with. So let's look at using the regular gradient. It may not say easy, but it's not really any harder to set up. Add the texture gradient above the agate texture and change its input parameter to driver A. Remember, the agate texture is already outputting to driver A. In the mini editor, you can use the middle mouse to create some keys. Select each key and then the colour wheel and choose an appropriate colour. Alternatively, you can click on the gear icon and bring up the full graph editor. Notice how the colours are displayed along the x-axis, which makes the ramp easy to visualize. This is a more flexible approach. We can have as many or as few keys as we want. We could also combine several textures in the driver A effect before applying the gradient. Add another texture, I chose grid, set its effect to driver A, and then select both of the textures and set their opacity to 50%, so we get half from each of them. Then set the blend mode to add, and we get a combination of the two.